You know, there are moments in life that don't look like turning points. They don't come with loud music, or dramatic exits, or even tears. Sometimes, they arrive quietly, hidden inside a laugh, a look, a sentence. And yet, they change everything. For me, it happened on a Sunday. A normal Sunday. Or at least, that's what I thought. The kind of Sunday I had built my life around. Family gathered. Voices overlapping. Plates clinking. Laughter filling every corner of the house. The kind of Sunday where, if you looked from the outside, you'd say, she has everything. And maybe, I believed that too. For a long time. Because for years, I was the one who made those Sundays happen. I was the one who planned everything, cooked everything, paid for everything. Yes, everything. The food on the table, the chairs they sat on, even sometimes, the problems they pretended didn't exist. I was the one who fixed things, quietly, without asking, without complaining, because that's who I had become. Not a person. Not really. A solution. And the strange thing is, I didn't even realize it. At first. Because when it started, it felt like love. You see, when my son introduced me to Sophie, I remember thinking, she's perfect for him. She had that bright smile, that confidence, that energy that fills a room before she even speaks. And he looked happy, truly happy. And when you're a mother, that's enough. More than enough. So I welcomed her. Not as a guest. Not even as a daughter-in-law. But as a daughter. I opened my home to her. And little by little, I opened everything else. At first, it was small. Could you help us just this month? We're a bit short. Things will get better soon. And I believed them. Of course I did. Because I didn't see it as giving money. I saw it as helping. As supporting. As being there. And when they said thank you, even if it was quick, even if it was distracted, it was enough. At least, back then. But you know how it goes. What starts as just this once becomes just one more time. And then suddenly, it's not a favor anymore. It's an expectation. The first time I paid their rent, I remember hesitating. Not because I didn't want to help, but because something inside me whispered, be careful. I ignored it. Because love doesn't question, right? Love gives. So I gave. And then came the bills. The car repairs. The holidays. Mom, it's just temporary. Mom, we'll pay you back. Mom, you're the only one we can count on. And that last sentence, it stayed with me. You're the only one we can count on. It made me feel important, needed, loved. But what I didn't realize is that there's a difference between being loved and being needed. A big difference. And I was about to learn it the hard way. Because slowly, very slowly, something started to change. At first, it was subtle. The thank you became shorter, then rarer, then non-existent. But the requests? Oh, they never stopped. In fact, they grew. Bigger, more frequent, more urgent. And I kept saying yes. Even when I was tired. Even when I had doubts. Even when, deep down, I knew something wasn't right. But I pushed that feeling away. Because I told myself, this is what family does. This is love. And maybe, a part of me was afraid. Afraid that if I stopped giving, I would stop being important. That if I said no, I would be left behind. So I continued. Until that Sunday. That Sunday. When everything broke. The house was full. Voices everywhere. The smell of food filling the air. I was in the kitchen. As usual. Moving quickly. Efficiently. Making sure everything was perfect. Because that's what I did. Because if everything was perfect, then maybe, just maybe, I was enough. I remember wiping my hands on a towel, taking a deep breath, and walking into the dining room with the main dish. They were all there. My son, Sophie, relatives, friends, all sitting, talking, laughing, and for a moment, I felt proud, because I had created this moment, this atmosphere, this illusion of happiness. I placed the dish in the center of the table. Careful, it's hot. Someone thanked me, quickly, without really looking, and I smiled, because that's what I did. I sat down, for once, and for a few seconds, everything felt normal. Then, she started talking. Sophie. At first, it was light, playful. You know how she is. People smiled. I smiled too, because it sounded harmless. But then, it continued. She can't help herself, always controlling everything. A few laughs. I felt something, but I ignored it, because maybe it was just a joke, right? Then came the next one. She really thinks nothing works without her. More laughter, louder this time, and suddenly, I wasn't laughing anymore, but I still smiled, because sometimes, you smile to hide the moment your heart starts breaking. And then, she said it. That sentence. The one that changes everything. At least we're lucky to have her. A pause. And then, she's useful for paying. Silence. Just for a second. And then, laughter. Not everyone. But enough. Enough to echo in my chest. Enough to stay with me forever. I looked around the table. Faces smiling. Eyes avoiding mine. And then, my son. I looked at him. Waiting. Hoping. Just one word. Just one look. Just something. To show that he saw me. That he understood. That he cared. But he said nothing. Nothing. And in that moment, I understood something I had refused to see for years. I wasn't a mother anymore. I wasn't even a person. I was a function. A wallet. A solution. So what did I do? I smiled. Yes. I smiled. I lowered my eyes. And I kept serving. Like nothing had happened. Because sometimes, the deepest pain doesn't scream. It goes silent. But inside, everything collapsed. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every laugh, every silence, and especially my own. Why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I defend myself? Why did I accept it? And then, somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, around 4 a.m., it hit me hard. They weren't the problem. I was me, who gave without limits. Me, who never said no. Me, who taught them that they could take everything, and I would still be there. Me, who confused love with sacrifice. And in that moment, something changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, irreversibly. I sat up, and for the first time in years, I asked myself a question. What about me? And the silence that followed was my answer. So I made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of truth. I was going to stop. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A message. Hey, could you send us some money? We're overdrawn. Of course that was the message. As if nothing had happened. As if I had imagined everything. I stared at the screen. For a long time, my fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was the moment. The real one. The one that decides everything. Go back. Or move forward. Stay the same. Or finally change. My heart was beating fast. Not from fear. But from something new. Something unfamiliar. Strength. And then, I typed 2 letters. No. I looked at it. Simple. Clear. Final. And I pressed send. And just like that, everything changed. You know, sometimes, the hardest part isn't saying no. It's everything that comes after. Because when you've spent years being the one who fixes everything, the moment you stop, it doesn't just create silence. It creates shock, confusion, and sometimes, anger. And I was about to feel all of it when I sent that message. Just one word. No. I didn't fully understand what I had just set in motion. I just knew that something inside me had finally shifted. For the first time in years, I had chosen myself. But choosing yourself, when you've spent a lifetime choosing others, feels unfamiliar, almost wrong, almost like you're doing something you shouldn't. So after I pressed send, I sat there, still, listening to the silence in the room, to the sound of my own breathing, to my heart beating a little too fast. And for a moment, I wondered, what if I made a mistake? Because habits don't disappear overnight, and neither does guilt. But then, I remembered that Sunday, the laughter, her voice, that sentence, she's useful for paying. And suddenly, the doubt disappeared. No, I hadn't made a mistake. I had just woken up. At first, there was nothing. No reply, no call, no reaction. And that silence felt strange, because I was used to urgency, used to messages like, "Can you send it now? We need it today. It's really important." But this time, nothing. And for a second, a tiny second, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe they understand. Maybe they are thinking. Maybe this will be different. But deep down, I knew better. Because people don't change overnight. Especially when they've never had to. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. A message. "My son. Is this a joke?" That was it. No hi. No are you okay? Just, is this a joke? I stared at those words. And I felt something shift again. Because that message told me everything. Not just about him, but about how he saw me. To him, my no wasn't a decision. It was a mistake. Something to correct. Something temporary. Something not serious. And that realization hurt more than the Sunday. Because humiliation fades. But being misunderstood, being unseen, that stays. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally understood that not every message deserves a response. An hour later, he called. I watched my phone light up. His name. The same name that used to make me smile. Now, it made my chest tighten. I didn't pick up. The phone stopped. Then it rang again. And again. And again. 5 times. 10 times. Each call more insistent than the last. And I sat there, watching it, doing nothing. And something strange happened. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't fixing. I was still. And in that stillness, I felt something new. Power. Not the loud kind. Not the aggressive kind. But the quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you don't have to move. That evening, another message. Longer this time. We don't understand your attitude. We need you. You can't just leave us like this. I read it slowly. Every word. And one sentence stood out. We need you. Not, we're worried about you. Not, did we hurt you? Not even, can we talk? No, we need you. Like I was a service, a function, a solution. And in that moment, everything became clear. They didn't love me. For me. They loved what I provided. What I solved. What I gave. And suddenly, I saw everything differently. All those years weren't just generosity. They were conditioning. I had taught them that my role was to give. Without limits. Without conditions. Without end. And now, because I had stopped, they didn't recognize me anymore. The next morning, They came. Without warning. Without asking. I heard the knock. Loud. Sharp. Demanding. The kind of knock that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that assumes. You will open. I froze. For a second. My heart started racing. Old reflexes. Old habits. Go open. Fix it. Explain. But I didn't move. I stayed seated. Breathing. Letting the moment pass through me. And then, slowly, I stood up. Not out of urgency, but out of choice. And I walked to the door. And I opened it. They were there. My son. And Sophie. Exactly as I expected. But something was different. Not them. Me. Because for the first time, I wasn't afraid of their reaction. My son looked tense. His jaw tight. His eyes searching mine. Sophie stood behind him. Arms crossed. Expression closed. Cold. No warmth. No softness. No apology. Just irritation. What is this behavior? No greeting. No concern. Straight to accusation. And I realized. They hadn't come to understand. They had come to correct me. To bring me back. To who I used to be. I looked at them. Calm. And I waited. For something. Anything. A sign of awareness. Of regret. Of humanity. But nothing came. So I spoke. I can't help you anymore. My voice surprised me. It was steady. Grounded. Clear. As if it had been waiting. For years. Sophie laughed. That same laugh. The one from Sunday. But now. I could hear it clearly. It wasn't confidence. It was discomfort. Oh really, she said. What happened? You suddenly woke up. I didn't answer. Because I understood something important. Not every question is meant to be answered. Some are just attacks. My son sighed. Frustrated. We have bills, he said. We're counting on you. You can't just drop us like this. Drop. That word again. As if I had abandoned them. As if I was responsible for their lives. And in that moment, something inside me stood up. For real. I don't owe you anything. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. My son stared at me. Confused. Hurt. Or maybe just shocked. Are you serious? He said. After everything we've done for you. And there it was. That illusion. That belief. That they had given me something. I looked at him. Deeply. What have you done for me? No anger. No sarcasm. Just truth. And he had no answer. None. Sophie stepped forward. Sharpened. Defensive. Honestly, you're overreacting, she said. You live alone. You don't have expenses like we do. It's normal that you help. Normal. That word again. And suddenly, everything aligned. Every moment. Every sacrifice. Every time I ignored myself. For them. No. One word. But this time, it carried weight. It's not normal. They weren't ready for that. I saw it. In their posture. In their eyes. And then, the anger came. From them. Not from me. Fine. My son stepped back. Cold. Distant. We'll figure it out without you. And you know what? That sentence was a gift. Because for the first time, they were going to face reality. Without me. They left. No goodbye. No apology. No understanding. Just distance. The door closed. And the silence returned. But this time, it felt different. Not empty. Not painful. Full. Complete. I sat down. Slowly. And I breathed. Deeply. And then, the tears came. Not from sadness. But from release. From years. Of holding everything in. Because saying no costs something. Even when it's right. The days that followed were quiet. No calls. No messages. Nothing. As if I had disappeared. And in a way, I had. The version of me they knew was gone. And even though there was a part of me that hurt, another part was finally free. But that peace was temporary, because a few days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated. Then I answered. Hello. A voice. Professional. Neutral. Hello. I'm calling regarding your son. And just like that, everything shifted again. Hello. I'm calling regarding your son. There are sentences that change the air around you. This was one of them. In that exact moment, everything slowed down. The room, the light, even the sound of my own breathing. What happened? My voice didn't sound like mine. It was softer, fragile, because no matter what had happened, no matter what I had decided, he was still my son. And a mother's heart doesn't just switch off. He's had a financial incident, the voice said. That word again. Incident. Such a small word. To carry something so heavy. We found your number listed as an emergency contact. Emergency. Now that word felt real. What kind of incident? I asked. There was a pause. A careful one. The situation is serious. Serious. And just like that, everything inside me understood. Not the details. Not yet. But the direction. The weight. The consequence. Because deep down, I had always known this day would come. You can't build a life on shortcuts, on borrowed money, on someone else's sacrifice, without it collapsing. Eventually, are you able to step in? The voice asked. And there it was. The moment. The real test. Not the Sunday. Not the laughter. Not even the no I had sent. No. This was the moment that would define everything. Because before, there would have been no hesitation. None. I would have said yes. Before the sentence was even finished. I would have reached for my card, my savings, my security. I would have fixed it. Again. And again. And again. Because that's what I had always done. But this time, I didn't speak. I closed my eyes. And suddenly, images came back. The kitchen. The table. The laughter. Her voice. She's useful for paying. And then, my own voice. No. And in that silence, I understood something that changed everything. If I said yes now, I would erase everything. Every boundary. Every truth. Every step I had taken toward myself. I would go back. To being invisible. To being useful. Instead of being valued. So I opened my eyes. And I said it. No. Soft. But unshakable. I can't step in. There was a pause. Longer this time. Then the voice changed. More distant. More professional. Understood. And just like that, the call ended. And I was alone. With my decision. With the silence. With the weight. Because saying no doesn't make the pain disappear. It just changes its shape. I sat there for a long time. Not moving. Feeling everything at once. The guilt. The fear. The doubt. But also, something else. Something stronger. Peace. Because for the first time, my decision wasn't about them. It was about me. The days that followed were heavy. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just heavy. The kind of weight that sits in your chest. That follows you into every room. Because even when you know you did the right thing, a part of you still wonders, did I go too far? Did I abandon him? Could I have done more? But then, the truth started to surface. Not from him. Not directly. But from the outside. A cousin called. Then a neighbor. And little by little, the story unfolded. Debt. A lot of it. Not just a little. Not manageable. No. Overwhelming. Credit cards maxed out. Loans stacked on top of loans. Payments missed. Warnings ignored. And behind it all, a lifestyle. Appearances. Trips they couldn't afford. Things they didn't need. Moments they wanted to show. More than they wanted to live. And Sophie. She hadn't stopped it. She had fed it. Encouraged it. Pushed it further. Because why not? There was always a safety net. Me. Except this time. The net was gone. And without it, everything fell. Hard. Fast. Uncontrolled. One evening, there was a knock at my door. Not loud. Not demanding. Soft. Almost. Hesitant. And I knew. Before I even moved. I knew. I stood up slowly, walked to the door, and opened it. He was there. My son. But not the version I knew. Not the confident one. Not the one who walked in like everything was under control. No. This one was different. His shoulders were lower. His posture smaller. His eyes tired. Empty. And behind him, there was no one. No Sophie. No confidence. No illusion. Just him. "Can I come in?" he asked. His voice was quiet. Careful. Like he wasn't sure he still had the right. And for a second, I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to let him in, but because I knew. This moment mattered. Not just for him. For me. Then I stepped aside. He walked in. Slowly. Like he was entering a place he didn't fully recognize anymore. We sat down. Across from each other. And the silence between us was different this time. Not empty. Not tense. Just real. She left. The words came suddenly, breaking the quiet. But not surprising me. Who? I asked. Even though I knew. Sophie. He swallowed. Hard. When the money stopped. A pause. She left. And there it was. The truth. Simple. Clear. Unavoidable. And in that moment, everything made sense. She hadn't loved him. Not really. She had loved what he could provide. And I had been part of that. Not intentionally. But I had sustained it. Fed it. Enabled it. For years. He looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in a long time. "I'm sorry." 2 words. So simple. And yet, so powerful. Because they were real. "I didn't see it," he said. His voice shaking. Or maybe, I didn't want to. Tears filled his eyes. And I watched him. Not as a disappointment. Not as a failure. But as someone who was finally waking up. "I lost everything," he said. His voice breaking completely now. And I realize now. He looked down. "I was losing you too." That sentence went straight through me. Because despite everything, he was still my child. And pain recognizes pain. But this time, I wasn't going to lose myself to save him. I leaned forward. Slowly. And I placed my hand on his. "I'm here." He looked up. Hope. Fragile. Careful. And then I said the most important part. But not like before. And I saw it. Understanding. Real. Deep. "I won't pay for your mistakes." Silence. But not rejection. Acceptance. "But I can help you." A pause. Learn how to stand again. And that changed everything. Because this time, it wasn't about saving him. It was about letting him grow. The months that followed weren't easy. Not for him. Not for me. There were moments of doubt. Moments of frustration. Moments where it would have been easier to just go back. To fix things. To make the pain disappear. But we didn't. He didn't. He found a job. Not perfect. But real. Stable. He started facing his responsibilities. One by one. Slowly. Painfully. But honestly. And I watched him change. Not overnight. Not magically. But truly. And me. I changed too. I started living differently. For myself. I went out. I rested. I said no. Not just to him. But to everything that didn't respect me. And something incredible happened. I started feeling whole. Not needed. Not used. Not depended on. Just valued. For who I was. Not for what I gave. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Now, when I think back to that Sunday, I don't feel anger. I don't feel pain. I feel Gratitude. Because that moment, that humiliation, was the beginning, not the end, the beginning of me. So if you're listening to this, and you feel like you're giving too much, loving too much, losing yourself, trying to be everything for everyone, hear this. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for saying no. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop. And sometimes, the silence you leave behind speaks louder than everything you ever gave.